Hello and welcome back for episode 2 of Let's Talk Rangers. Before we start, first of all, just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who checked out episode 1. The response across YouTube, X, and all the clips that we put out on TikTok has genuinely blown us away, hasn't it, Ross? So the support, the messages, the likes and shares, genuinely been class, and we've genuinely been chuffed about some of the people that have retweeted us as well. Really, really means a lot to us and gives us a huge boost to keep this going. We've been really, really looking forward to getting episode 2 recorded. Maybe not so much watching Rangers, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, but especially after the reaction to the first one, we couldn't wait to come back and get this conversation going. This week, the focus is on Rangers against Hibs, the first time Rangers are playing two Edinburgh teams this week. It's a big game. I was going to say plenty of talking points, but we'll certainly manage this one. Breaking it all down, looking at where Rangers are right now, what's working, what still needs to be fixed. And by the way, Ross, before we go into it, you can't just say everything needs fixed. Today's pod, we're going to be talking about the overall reaction to the game, Rangers starts to matches. I think we'll probably be talking about the ending of this game a bit more than the start of this game. A few individual performances I want to talk about. Sterling, what's revealed to be the most bizarre injury I think I've ever heard of anybody getting a football pitch. The European exit, transfers. So, Ross, let's get to it and let's talk Rangers. First of all, what was your overall thoughts on the game against Hibs at Ibrox?
Yeah, Kyle, it's good to be back. And I'm surprised we actually made it for a second week after that midweek performance from Rangers. So it's probably worth saying we are very fortunate at this point that Rangers are winning games as we record podcasts because, there's lots of people that are in that situation. So, we're very fortunate. In terms of Hibs, a bit of mixed emotions, I suppose. I think overall it's a really, really good result. I think Rangers are going into a really tough run of fixtures at the moment. Hibs was a tough game at home. I think that's the third time we've played them this season. That's 3 victories and 3 clean sheets. And no doubt about it, Hibs are a very good team at the moment. There's a lot of good teams actually in Scotland. And for us to get 3 results against them is good considering where we've been. And then obviously we're looking at that game at Tynecastle at the weekend against Hearts, which is going to be a huge kind of showdown and give us a good perspective of where we are in terms of any sort of title race. I think at this point it's hard to see that, but this game will give us that. In terms of Hibs itself, I thought the first half we struggled, and we'll maybe touch on that later on in the podcast. I think maybe the shape is something that is maybe up for debate at the moment at home. Can Rangers really afford playing a 5 at the back? In domestic fixtures home, I'm not sure. Second half, I really liked a lot of what I've seen from Rangers in that second half. It wasn't pretty at times, but they dug in. A lot of grit, a lot of determination. Hibs really turned up the pressure in the last 15 minutes. They brought as many attacking players onto the park as possible, and they weren't really able to create much, to be honest with you. Rangers dealt with it. And Rangers finished that game with a back three of Nasser Shika, Manny Fernandez, and Clinton Ciala. You know, that's not a back three that any of us would have picked at any point this season. And the likes of Dujon Sterling in there in the first half who's not had a lot of football. So there's pros and cons from that performance. I think, Kyle, lots of positive, lots of negatives. I think from where we've been this season, I think you've just got to put it down as a really good result performance. I think there's still a lot to go for Rangers. I think we're all aware of that as a fan base. But a result to get that at home, another clean sheet, I think that's 6 wins and 2 draws in Danny Rowe's first 8 games. And I said this last week on the podcast, from where we've been at the beginning of this season, that's a really good start. Like we have to be honest. The performances are hopefully going to come over time, and January is going to be really important for us. But it's all relative, and based where we've been, I think you just have to put that Hibs win down as a really good result and something hopefully we can build on going into a really tough run of fixtures.
This is it exactly. You've got to start off, give yourself a good platform, and Rangers have done that. I've got to say, Ross, I think, you and I have talked about it many times this season between ourselves, that I've not really been looking forward to watching a lot of Rangers games going to Ibrox. We've seen it as a bit more of a duty rather than something, we're looking forward to going to do. But I feel like the support especially is becoming not acceptable of this team. The bar's not that high, but I completely agree. Especially in that second half, we got to see things from Rangers that we've not really seen. A bit of character, a bit of grit, a bit of determination to keep the clean sheet and to keep the win. Rule said when he came in, and I loved it in his German accent when he said it about winning dirty. Is this now what Rangers are starting to do? Is this a side of Rangers that we are now that we've not seen at all this season?
Yeah, I think so. I think Danny Rowe's understanding of the situation he's walking into, the predicament Rangers are in. I think he understands that this squad are so far away from what he believes is likely a real squad that you can build sustained success with. I think he's understanding of that. You don't have the start of the season that we've had if your squad's in a perfect place. And I think he's came in and he's quickly recognised that the best way to get everyone behind me here at Rangers is to get results and get them quickly. Now, in the league, that is what he's done. European results have been different, and I think there's a bit more context on that compared to like the quality of player that we have compared in that competition. But domestically, I think he's came in, he's set Rangers up in a way that makes them really difficult to beat. And I think that's something that we've wanted. Now, something that surprised me this week, digging into some of the statistics, Rangers have actually only lost once in the league this season, which I couldn't really believe when I went back and looked at that. One defeat and a team that I think we all believe are, just so far off the required level for a successful Rangers side. But yeah, I think he's came in, he's trying to build something from the back, I believe. He's trying to make us difficult to play against. The clean sheets are there. And I think the big thing you've got to say for Danny Rule as well is that he doesn't have, he's got selection headaches at the moment in terms of there's lots of injuries in that back line that he's having to deal with. And he's still managing to kind of churn out results. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of hard work involved, I think, going into this. I think if you sat Danny Rule down, you would probably say to him, what do you want to address in January? What are the problem areas? And that joke you made at the start of the podcast, Kel, I think you would probably say everything, right? That would be most of the squad. So I'm trying to be positive at the moment. I think we all say in football that performances will eventually catch up with you. If Rangers, especially that first half against Hibs, I think if Rangers go into the run of games they've got now and they perform like they did in that first half, they are going to drop points. It's going to happen. If we see a little bit more of what we've seen in the second half, where it isn't perfect, and at times it is difficult to watch, but I've seen a Rangers team giving absolutely everything. And I think there's been times this season where I've not been able to say that. I don't think the effort levels have been there. So I'm quietly encouraged at this stage. I think, like I said before, I think there's something to build on. And I'm also looking forward to January because I'm hoping January can maybe give us that little bit more of a spark where these kind of average performances can go to a good or a great, and we can see a real sustained run of performances, which ultimately should bring you a real sustained run of results.
That's it. A coach can, I mean, oh God, this is going to sound like Mr. Cliche here, but a coach can literally only work with the players that he's got. You've seen it roll down at Sheffield Wednesday. He came in and he made individual change. I mean, that's the thing we keep hearing about him. He seems like he's a really, really good man manager. As you said, he has got bin fires all over the pitch that you just constantly feel that he's trying to put out in combat against. But like I said, I do want to focus a bit more on the second half, which is weird as we for starting off the podcast because it was positive, it was better. You hit the nail on the head there. We've seen things, players were digging in, and that is just not something that we've seen this season. Why do you think that change is happening? Do you think it's down to tactics? Do you think it's down to formation, or do you just finally think that the players are buying into the manager's ideas? Ross, what do you think it is?
Maybe a rocket at half time from Danny Rule. Maybe he's got them, sat them down in the dressing room at half time and said it's not good enough, regardless of that first half. And the first half goal from Emmanuel Fernandez, which is a really good header from Emmanuel Fernandez, and it's a great ball in from Dujon Sterling, which I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit more. But yeah, maybe it comes down to that. Maybe some slight tweaks in the shape and maybe asking Rangers to be a little bit more aggressive. I thought we were quite passive in the first half, and I thought in the second we were more aggressive and we were starting to put Hibs under pressure on their back line. We didn't really do that in the first half, and I think we just made the game way too comfortable for them. So yeah, maybe some slight tactical tweaks. Maybe the players again, maybe getting a bit of a dressing down at halftime and being told that things aren't good enough. And look, that's not a surprise if that is the case, because we've seen that several times this season. So it's hard to pinpoint it too much, because from a shape perspective and personnel, there weren't a lot of changes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it does concern me overall how it can be so different in terms of just like that real intensity, because that was the word I said about the first half. There was a lack of intensity, but I've seen more of it in the second half, and I thought Mikey Moore absolutely epitomised that. I just thought he gave absolutely everything in the game, and I think lots of other players kind of were feeding off of that. Dujon Sterling's probably the same camp, where that real hard working nature that he has, the determination in the tackle, he's intense in everything he does. I think that rubs off on other players, and maybe we need more of those in the squads. Maybe that's the type of recruitment we need to do in January as well. But yeah, I wish I had the answers, Kyle, in terms of why that second half looks so different to the first. I don't think I would be sitting here in this podcast with you if I had the answers. I'd maybe be sitting in Rangers in some capacity, but definitely we're right, I think, to focus on the second half to begin with, because I think there is some encouraging signs there. Not perfect, but I think there's something that shows me at least these players are buying into the manager. And I think at times over the last couple of years, it has been evident that the players have not bought into the manager. And that's been several. That's not just one. It's been Michael Beale, it's been Philippe Clement. I think even at times under Barry Ferguson, you could see the players weren't really buying into what he was wanting to do. So, and obviously the big one is Russell Martin, right? I think we all seen that at the beginning of the season. The players are not buying into this. So look, maybe there's some encouraging signs in that second half that even when things are tough and you're not playing at your best, you've got a 1-goal advantage. And if you dig in, you can get a result. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that is the most important thing.
I know Ross already dreaming of the brown brogues in episode 2 of Let's Talk Rangers. I don't know if I had that quickly as we were going on for the podcast. But another thing as well, what you said there is, who knew being a manager would be so straightforward? You just have to win a bunch of games and the players will start believing in what you're doing and get behind you with it. But yeah, it's encouraging. It's encouraging to see that there was more grit, there was more determination in that second half. As you said, the intensity was there, but then equally at the same time, without being too negative about it, I'm going, the fact that it's an 18-year-old for Tottenham Hotspur that's coming up here and he's our player that's encouraging other players to do stuff, setting the example, we maybe have a bit of an issue in terms of that in the squad. But listen, let's go on to the first half. I know you and I were talking throughout that first half, and I don't know, it was just, I know we got the goal, but it was so lethargic. There was so many mistakes in that. Like the passing was just abysmal at times. It just seemed to really, really break down. We posted it out on the socials and X about a reaction to that team lineup about I think there was about a debate whether it been 4 at the back, 5 at the back. You and I have had this discussion before between ourselves, Ross, about, do Rangers really need to start with 5 at the back at home? Is this how Rangers go and push against teams? What's your thoughts? And I've asked you about what was so good about the second half. Now I'm going to come on and ask you, why didn't it quite click in that? And I realise we got the goal in that first half, but to me we looked more dangerous in the second half. Why wasn't it quite there? Why wasn't the performance quite there in the first half?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the goal comes against the run of play, because I thought at that point Hibs were the better team. They maybe necessarily weren't creating a lot of chances, but they definitely had the territory. And I think they showed some of the statistics when I watched the game back that they had a lot more of the ball in the final third than Rangers did at that point. So you're right to bring this up because we did discuss it earlier. I'm just not convinced of that shape at home at Ibrox when you're the initiative has got to be with Rangers at home to go and press the opposition and put them under pressure and dominate really the middle of the park. That's what you're always wanting in a big game like that. Or any game really, you want to dominate midfield. And I don't think we were able to do that. Now, I'll give Hibs some credit. I think they done well in the first half to put us under pressure. They didn't let Giga and Fernandez have any time with the ball. They were putting them under pressure every single time. And that kind of lopsided shape where Sterling was playing as a third centre-back, but he had kind of Aarons tucked in on the right-hand side as well. It looked like one of those where when Rangers were attacking, it went to a 4 and Max Aarons was pushed really high. And when they were defending, they went to a 5 and Aarons came back in. So I understand that. So maybe the manager would argue and say, well, when we were in possession, it was a 4 and what I get it, and it was a wee bit more fluid. I just don't know in games like that. Can you put an opposition under enough pressure at Ibrox when you're playing in that shape? I'm not sure. Now, you would maybe have that conversation with Danny Rule and he would say, this is the personnel I have based on injuries, based on rotation, because Rangers have got to do that going into this run. They've had a lot of fixtures. And maybe he would argue and say, I had to make some changes and maybe the quality of the starting 11 comes down slightly. So you're playing a kind of more conservative side. Okay, again, that's fair. But I think we've seen a couple of times now under Danny Rule. And I like this aspect of him, that he's willing to change slight things from game to game. I just think the last few times we played with a back 5, I don't know if it's really worked. And I know we've won the game against Hibs, and I understand that. But I think we can all see that the performance level wasn't at maybe what we wanted to get to. So I think there's definitely some reservations for me on that shape with the personnel we have at the moment. It's going to be interesting to see what we do in January, Kyle. Are we going to recruit to suit that shape? Or are we going to recruit in a way that lets us, we can move away from it and we can comfortably play with a 4 at the back? I'm not sure what way it's going to go, to be honest with you. That's where January is going to be really interesting. But for me, maybe there's a slight mentality issue as well. I think we've seen this season at Ibrox that the players do struggle with the environment at times. And let's be honest, everyone turn up to Ibrox to watch that game is expecting a win. Right, you're at home to Hibs. We've beat them twice this season. You're expecting to go and win that game. So maybe there's a bit of pressure involved. You have the likes of Chimiti up front and then Curtis and Moore behind them. Good players, a little bit of inexperience there. Yeah, there's maybe a combination of things, but I think the overall point I want to make is, and it'd be interesting to hear others' thoughts on this, maybe in the comments and things. I'm not sure that shape just works at home when you're wanting to really be the aggressor in the game. You know what I mean? You want to put players under pressure. You want to press a back line. Chimiti wasn't able to do that because there was no support behind them. There's no midfield, which means your two wingers can't really press the game, because if they press the game and they're beat, it's one ball through the middle and Hibs are away. And it happened a few times because the press was unorganised. I think it's something Danny will look at. He obviously knows about football tactics way more than I do. But just looking at it, I'm not really sure if that's something we should go with for the rest of the season. I just have some reservations on that.
Yeah, whenever we start with a back 5, because that is what it was at Ibrox, we are so open. That is one of the most open first halves of football I can ever remember.
That's exactly the game Hibs want, by the way, Kyle. That is the game they want. They want an open game. They want transitions. They want the ball to turn over quickly and get at Rangers, because that's going to frustrate the crowd, isn't it? Because the crowd are expecting Rangers to dominate the ball, pen Hibs in. And really, if Rangers are trying to break and they're turning the ball over quick and Hibs can then break, that suits them perfectly. That's the game plan that they were going to set up for, wasn't it? That's how they're going to approach that game.
Yeah, and that's it. And I suppose we almost played right into their hands in that first half, because, as you said, the Hibs, hold our hands up, Hibs were the better team in that first half, probably looked more likely to score. But as you said, it changed in the second half. I'm maybe not going to say like the personnel, but see that shape that we had with Chimiti, Asgard, Diomande, Raskin in that 6-ish position, and then Gassama, and who was on at that point on the right? I'm sure you'll be able to tell me, Ross. But anyway, and then the back four.
Cav came on at right back.
Yeah. Cav, it just the shape just looked so much better. It just seemed to suit that team. And yeah, I'm sure we'll come on to it later on in the podcast as well. But it's that thing that Danny Rule keeps saying. I love it when he says this, because I never really heard a manager saying this. He's like talking about players like job sharing, like two players for the same position, but also having been able to go over different areas of the pitch as well. We've heard this. Modern managers love talking about this, about getting in players that can play in multiple positions. And yeah, it'll be absolutely fascinating to see what Rangers do in the January transfer. But before we come on to that news, Ross, just a couple of players, couple of performances that we've not seen in a while. Obviously, Dujon Sterling, that was one of the big talking points before the game. Obviously, Raskan being injured, not been on, he got the last 10 minutes. I was actually surprised to hear that he came on after Rule was saying pre-match about it as well. And obviously, the big blow, Miovski being out. Some positive news from that in terms of that they tried to get him in this morning, but it just wasn't possible, which might make me think he might just be available for the weekend, but I'm not promising anything. But yeah, Dujon Sterling back in the starting 11, a guy that we heard who had, I think it was Billy Dodds in the radio, was saying that he did his Achilles tendon before the Bilbao game by stepping on a sprinkler. That just seems like Mr. Accident Prone. But what was your thoughts on Dujon Sterling tonight, and what did he bring to the team that's defensively maybe been lacking a bit?
Yeah, first of all, I'm delighted to see him back, because that was a bad injury. I think that was 7 months he was out for, and I think all professional footballers talk about it, it's really difficult being on the sideline for that period of time. So really happy to see him back and start a game. I know he played some minutes in Europe midweek and he was okay. But yeah, it was good to see him start the game. I think at times he was still showing a little bit of rustiness, I'll be honest with you. But as the game progressed, I thought he got a lot better. Won the ball in some really good areas at times. And I think that's what Dujon Sterling gives you. He's so aggressive that he's willing to kind of step into the play and win the ball. And I think as a forward or a midfielder, that's kind of your worst nightmare, that a defender's just willing to come and match you. And he's always good at kind of getting a toe in and winning the ball and progressing it. So that's the first thing. I think, again, his defensive awareness from that corner that Hibs should score, let's be honest, and it's a goal-saving line, a goal line clearance that saves Rangers. They should go behind at that point. And then he's on the left-hand side for the Emmanuel Fernandez goal, and look, it's a really good cross. He's on the left-hand side, he cuts back onto his right foot and swings it across, and Emmanuel Fernandez gets the header. So yeah, I'm really happy to see him back. I think there's still a lot more to come from Dujon Sterling. I don't think he's definitely not at his peak level yet, and I think he would admit that. But I think that game tonight really helped him. He got 60 minutes in the tank, and I think that those type of moments in the game show you how much we've missed them. I always think back to the clearance against, was it Celtic at Parkhead, where he basically overhead kicks it off the line. These are the type of things I think back to for Dujon Sterling. He does have kind of big moments like that, and I think why a lot of the support, are attached to Dujon Sterling and resonate with him is because of the way he plays the game, right? Kind of wears his heart in his sleeve. He gives everything, and sometimes he might have a bad game, but you can never question Dujon Sterling's kind of work rate and work ethic and this, that attitude towards the game. He wants to win, and I think that's why a lot of the sport really like him. At times, are the sport frustrated with his injury issues? Absolutely. Do they want him in the park more? Yeah, of course, but it's because of how good a player he is. So hopefully now we can get him to a point where his body settles down a little bit and we can get some consistency out of him. We gave him a new contract a year ago, if you remember. He was coming towards the end and we decided to give him a new contract. And up until that point, he had injury issues too. So clearly the club think there is a good player in there and they're willing to get behind him and back him. Let's hope we can get that return from Dujon Sterling now. But yeah, really good performance from him. And let's see if he can kick on from that now.
Well, the thing for me is that that's him been under a couple of managers at Rangers now, and I think every time he's come back from injury, he's gone straight back into the squad, like one of the first names to go back into the squad. The other thing for me, you touched on it there, he is one of the best decision makers in our team, and what I mean by that is the the two instances that you pointed out there in terms of going back for that goal line clearance. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant to anticipate that ball would be there. Terrible defending again on the lead up to it, but for him to anticipate going there. And the third thing for me is it was very evident, especially against Ferencvaros, and maybe a bit at times in that first half. Like there was that when Kieran Bowie came up against Emmanuel Fernandez quite a few times, and there was a couple of tussles, and Kieran Bowie was just getting the better of a lot of our defenders. He didn't get the better of Dujon Sterling in a physical battle. That's the thing that we lack at times, is a bit of physicality, and he definitely brought that tonight, and it was good to see. It was just he just brought a bit more balance to the defence, which is good. The next player I want to come and talk about, and to be honest with you, Ross, I think if you had your way, so far we are 100% talking about this guy on every podcast we've done so far, but I think you would keep talking about him from now until the end of the season. I can already hear you championing, can we sign him for another year on loan? And it's Mikey Moore. We touched on him a wee bit earlier on, but first time he's been back in the Rangers starting lineup for I think 4 or 5 games, and I thought he was really, really good tonight.
He's such a good footballer. Honestly, I always kind of have to check myself because I forget he's 18. And I think you can see why Spurs, English football, even European football to a level rate this boy so highly. I think he's wonderful. Such a good footballer. I think the big thing for me is like what you would expect to see from experienced players. Mikey Moore's he's already got 18. Like, see his understanding of how to use his body, because obviously he's such a good ball carrier, very good dribbling success. That kind of raw attribute is there, but his understanding of when to shift his body and shield the ball and turn out, he's just such a good player. Like, I think there's lots of criticism of Rangers in the loan market, and there's several players in that squad at the moment that people would say, why have we taken them on loan? They don't contribute enough, cut them short. Mikey Moore is not one of them. And it's something I tweeted about after the game. A lot of similarities with Malik Tillman, not in terms of the type of player they are, but you look at the two of them, because I felt exactly the same about Malik Tillman when I was here. You look at them and go, their technical level is way above everyone else. Like, way above. Now, that doesn't mean that Mikey Moore is the best player in the squad yet, but just from a pure raw technical aspect, he's the best in that Rangers squad. He has just the way he carries the ball. We've seen some of the finishes he's already pulled off for the club. He's just such a good player. And that was the way I felt about Malik Tillman at the time. And I think the thing that broke my heart with Malik Tillman was that supposedly the fee was agreed, and yet you felt like there was a chance he was going to stay. And then it turned out quite quickly he didn't want to be here. And that's fine. I think we can look at Malik Tillman now. He got that move to PSV and then Bayer Leverkusen for like 30 million or something. I knew he was going to go on and be a top level footballer. You could see it as soon as he kicked the ball here. Mikey Moore's the same for me. There's no way he'll be here after this season. I think we just enjoy him when we got him, and hopefully he can contribute enough that brings some sort of success for the end of the season. I feel sorry for the likes of Mikey Moore and like a Rangers squad like this, because I think his talent deserves a lot better players around him. And I would have loved to have seen him in a much better Rangers team, because in terms of like individual talent, he's so good to watch. And as I referenced this last week, so I won't go over it too much, it was a difficult start for him. There was a lot of people saying that this boy shouldn't be coming up here. He's taking minutes off the likes of Finlay Curtis. He shouldn't be doing that. He's not showing it. And then in the last month and a half, I mean, you look at it now and go, wow, we have a player that is just... This is why I like the loan market for Rangers. I think we have to have an understanding of where we are in the kind of food chain. And there's no way that Rangers can get a player like that permanently. And that's difficult for me to accept, because there's that kind of nostalgic part of me that looks back and Rangers had some of the best players in the world at some point. We're not at that point anymore, unfortunately. And I look at the likes of Mikey Moore and I'm like, there's just no way that we would be able to get a player like that permanently anymore. So to get him up here for a season and contribute is really good. Like I said before, I wish it was in a more successful side. But I just really enjoy watching him. I think a lot of the support are in the same place now. He's so good to watch because he's a bit of a throwback. He's got the kind of dribbling and running speed and ball carrying is like a Jack Grealish, for example. That's what I think he carries the ball like. And I personally love watching Jack Grealish play. So he's got a little bit of that about him. And I think he'll go right to the very top. Mikey Moore. We had a player last year in Hamza Egaman, and I looked at and I thought, well, you'll go right to the very top when you leave Rangers. And Mikey Moore's the same. I just look at him and think you're special. And yeah, like I said before, I have to pinch myself that he's only 18.
Oh, there it is. The first time I've not unmuted myself. But yeah, he is a very, very good football player for his age. And 100% for anybody asking, Ross has got a Moore Rangers top underneath his black hoodie there. I'm telling you, I guarantee it. I know he's hiding it, but he's hiding it well. But listen, we've got to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about this, but it's Rangers in Europe this year. We'd be remiss if we didn't address it, and it has been an absolute pitiful Europa League campaign. Rangers are sitting 33rd out of 36 teams in the Europa League table so far. They've managed one pitiful draw against Braga at home, and that was not a good game of football to watch at all. But Ross, Rangers struggles in Europe have been well noted this year. It's from the it was an absolute stinking Champions League qualification campaign, well, especially towards the end against Club Brugge. Many people arguing that should have been when Russell Martin should have gotten the sack because it was such a terrible result. And since then, it's not really got much better. Maybe the one aspect that you could possibly give a bit of criticism to Rule in terms of Europe so far, but simple question for you here. Why do you think Rangers have fallen so short this year in Europe? Is it to do with squad depth? Is it to do with... Because that's one of the first times ever looking at that bench at the weekend. There was hardly any what you would consider first team names on that bench against Ferencváros. But what do you make of it? Why has it been so tragic, quite frankly, for Rangers in Europe this year?
I think it comes down to recruitment, Kyle. I think we've had a sporting director come in the summer, and he's looked at the English market as being, the primary focus for us. And he's maybe looked at that and thought that'll be good enough for a domestic level for us to build on, develop players, sell them on. And he's just completely avoided what is required in Europe. I mean, we've been embarrassed at times in Europe this year. And to think where we were last year, I mean, it was only March where we knocked out Fenerbahce to reach the Europa League quarter-final against Bilbao. And let's be honest, we were on the end of a bad decision in that tie that could have swayed it completely. I mean, Rangers could have been looking at going to a semi-final if things had went our way. To then go 9 months forwards and you are sitting 33rd in the Europa League after 6 games and you're out. That's a massive fall off. You've got the only blame for me is recruitment. I can't really look at anything else. I think we have just not recruited players that can perform at this level. There's too many players that don't have any experience of it. And we've got rid of a lot of players that did have experience of it. There's not enough in there that can carry the can. I look at the likes of Jaden Magoma is the one I look at. Now, again, this might sound really harsh, actually, because I think I'm based on the players we've signed this summer. I actually think Jaden Magoma has been one of the better ones. I think he's been the more consistent performer out of the players we've had on loan. And again, he's only 19, and I think he's done well at times. But seeing Europe, and I'm not trying to bash the boy at all, but seeing Europe, he looks so far out his depth. Honestly, every single game he's played, I just think he's been bullied. And it's not... I feel for him because he's so early in his development that you would maybe bring him in and out of European games. You'd maybe start one, whatever. You know what I mean? You would bleed him into it he's not had the opportunity this year. I know there was one of the games Daddy Real played Max Arians at left back, didn't he? But every game I've seen Jane Magoma this year in Europe, and he's not alone. He came to my head when we were talking about that there. Just look out their depth. And I think that's what we see with this squad. I think you're right to bring up the squad depth in general is not there. Rangers' strongest 11, you would maybe argue and say should be able to pick up some results in Europe against the likes of Ferencvaros and Bran and Genk at home. Rangers should still be winning these games. There's no doubt about it. But I think once you go beyond that starting 11, I'm starting to look at it and I'm going, actually, no, I don't think we do have the right depth to deal with this. So yeah, it comes down to recruitment for me. Kevin Thelwell, I'm sure we won't talk about him too much on this podcast going forward. But I think his recruitment in the summer in terms of the European competition was abysmal. Like he's set us back years, unfortunately, because he's just not understood what is required at that level. And as much as we all sit as a fan base and we look at domestic trophies as the most important thing, that is the case. Like you have to win domestically. You've got to win trophies. We can't deny that Europe is so important in terms of a financial landscape, and we have to continue performing at that level. And unfortunately, right now, we just don't have the squad to do it.
Well, that's it. I suppose all avenues effectively read down to recruitment this year. But the thing for me in Europe has just been Rangers' ability to actually keep a hold of the ball for longer than like 10 seconds. To be honest with you, it's been so bad. Like it's weird as a Rangers fan, like I said, not looking forward to European games, and just the atmosphere at Ibrox has just been like so flat, and even amongst like group chats with pals and stuff like that, like there's not been that usual buzz. For me, I think a lot of the damage was done in that 6-0 loss against Bruges. Like that just scarred so many players, and they just kept carrying it on with them. And then the other thing is we know there's so many players in this Rangers team that have got an individual mistake on them. The difference between the SPFL and the Europa League is that the teams are much, much better at doing the basics right, and you're going to get punished far more when you expose yourself to these sort of things. But listen, let's move on to something a bit more positive, something that Rangers can hopefully do to change a lot of the recruitment mistakes that have been made. And by the way, this isn't a call for you, by the way, Ross, to start championing that Rangers sign Alex Gogic after the weekend. All right, so I'm
don't dog
in
me
that
in
chat
that.
straight away. Listen,
that's not what I'm saying. Don't try and tell people that's me. No, I'm not. I'm not having this because my Twitter will be full of people going for me. That is not my opinion. That is not what I'm saying at all. I just really enjoyed his goal at the weekend. Okay, it was a cup final, great pass. You know, we won't talk about that too much. I just enjoyed what Alex Gogic produced at the weekend. That's all.
I've seen the search history. Gogic 40 in the back of the Rangers Pro Kit for the shop. We are your discount code on it as well. That's it. But listen, the sort of first aspect of the transfer, it's been very, very vocal, especially socials over the past couple of days, and that is Joe Rothwell leaving the club. Looks like Derby, I should say. I don't know if I said Derby there. Derby and Sheffield Wednesday. I think Sheffield Wednesday look to be the strongest interest, or the most strongly interest from a club. No brainer, Ross. It's just not worked out, hasn't it? Not.
No, it might be Sheffield United, by the way, but I could be wrong on that. I thought it was Sheffield United, I read. But regardless, it's one of the Sheffield clubs, right? Yeah, it's not worked out. I think Joe Rothwell, I think a lot of people are in the same place with Joe Rothwell, that actually on paper it looked like a really good bit of business from Rangers. Like it wasn't a high fee and you were getting a player in that had played in the last 2 seasons, teams that had been promoted from the Championship. And I know the historical, our history, of signing players from that league is not the best. But I think Joe Rothwell, you looked at a 30-year-old, and at the time when I think the fan base were trying to be open to the Russell Martin appointment, looked at it and went, okay, he's worked with them before, someone that can come in and he can help the rest of the players in this squad. He's got a bit of experience and he can kind of pass on what the manager's looking for. It just never worked. I think from the start, Kyle, I don't think Joe Rothwell looks fit. Like, it just looks like he's not had a pre-season at all. And he got a little bit unlucky because I actually remember he came off the bench against Celtic, didn't he? In that game we drew at home. And he actually done really well. He kind of changed the game that day. And then he got injured and taken off. And I just think from that point on, he's just never recovered. And to me, I mean, everyone's cynical in football nowadays. I mean, do we believe he's injured, or do we believe that Rangers are just protecting their assets so they can definitely get him out the door in January? Look, I'm not sure. You're never going to know in football what the truth is with that. But yeah, I think the profile of the player made sense. Again, famous Rangers, buy a player that has played as what you would consider a number 8 for his whole career, that box-to-box style midfielder, and we bring him in and we ask him to play the deepest midfielder. I don't understand our recruitment. I don't get it. Like, if you want someone to play that role, that specialised role, go and sign someone that does it. Like, don't sign a player that's 30 and hasn't really played that role before. Like, he has played as a deepest midfielder for Leeds at times, and even done it for Blackburn at times. But it's not as predominant area on the park. And I think everyone that spoke about Joe Rothwell has said he's such a good carrier of the ball. Like, he's unbelievably fast with the ball at his feet. We never made use of anything like this. So there's always two sides of this, Kyle. When a player doesn't work out as a club, you have to look at the club from a recruitment standpoint and say, you've obviously not done something right there. But I think at the same time, you need to look at Joe Rothwell and say, did he apply himself properly? Because, like I said, I don't think he's looked fit at times. The big thing I'll look at for this guy, I think we're very, very fortunate. He's got such a good reputation down south, and someone's going to take him, because we've had plenty of players in the past that we've signed. They've maybe came through academies down south, or they've had experience down there, and we've found it really difficult to move them on. Joe Rothwell has a lot of suitors down south. He will get a move because of how good he's been in the Championship. So, like I said, we're very, very fortunate, and I think that's one we're just going to have to get done as early as possible, which hopefully frees up some space for us to bring in another midfielder, because we are short in there now. We are. It's Diomande, it's Raskan, and it's Barron. That's the three of them that are playing every single week, because the likes of Cameron and Asgard aren't really getting a look in, are they? I mean, Cameron's not even getting off the bench. So we definitely need to add some more in there, which we'll maybe touch on. But yeah, Joe Rothwell himself, it's one of those ones where you just look back and go, didn't work out. I think all parties have to take their blame in that, and you just move them on.
Yeah, that's it. Look, I've just got Sheffield Wednesday on the brain with how many links that we've had to them this season already with Rule and Gassama and all that stuff. But see, for me, it's more than just getting a player that's been poorly performing under us. I don't think it's a coincidence that he's the first one that's been publicly linked away from Rangers, because if you remember, he was the guy that came in. He was the guy that Russell Martin was like, here, you want to know how successful I am? Go and ask this guy. Do you not remember in his first post-match press conference, he came out and he's like, we need to really buy into this. And I think Rule's gone, nah, you are too much of the old manager. You're not for me. So yeah, I think there's a bit of symbolism to it as well. But you said, really, really straightforward question here, and you can't just say everywhere. What are the priority areas for Rangers to strengthen in the January transfer window, Ross?
It's difficult, Kyle, because I think it's hard to address all of your problem areas in January. It's such a difficult market. If you had to ask me,
where would you prioritise?
A spine. I think Rangers need a spine. I think they need another centre-back. I think they need a central midfielder in some capacity. And I think they need a striker. I know Miovski's picked up in the last couple of weeks, but I don't think you can rely on Chermiti if Miovski isn't available, and you never know what's going to happen in terms of injuries through the season. I'm not even going to bring Danilo into the conversation. I think we can all see Danilo's not going to do it for Rangers. He's not going to cut it. He's been here long enough. He just doesn't produce enough. And I feel for him. It's just unfortunate in football. Sometimes you pick up a bad injury and it sets you back, and sometimes you don't recover. And I think that is the case with Danilo. But for me, it would be a spine. They need a commanding centre-back, preferably someone with maybe towards the latter end of their career with experience. I think I would like to see that, because you've a lot of likes Nasser Giga in there that goes to AFCON. You've got Emmanuel Fernandez, you've got Clinton and Ciala. No idea when Derek Cornelius is going to be back. I wouldn't be surprised if that goes into February, March. And then obviously you've got the likes of John Suter, who has experience. I'd let that, for me, I think you've got enough developing players in there at centre-back. It would have to be an experienced centre-back. Midfield, crying out for a number 6. Because I've said this before, and I might get a lot of pelters on this in terms of comments and things. I don't think Nicholas Raskin's a number 6. I just don't. Not for Rangers anyway. He might do it for Belgium, but it's a very, very different task for Belgium. He is told, you're the guy that goes and gets it and gives it to the better players. And that's fine. That's not the job at Rangers. See, as a number 6 at Rangers, you're going to have to do a lot more than that, because you're going to dominate the ball here every single week. And I'm not sure his passing is good enough for that. But again, I'm open to other people's opinions. So for me, it would be a number 6. Someone that has that presence, sits at the base. Connor Barron, I think, has done well in recent weeks, but having competition there is a good thing. So yeah, that's what I would want us to address.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I thought you literally meant you wanted to go and surgically put a spine into most of these players. After so many of them just absolutely lack it, don't they? But yeah, it'll be fascinating to see where Rangers do decide to go out and strengthen. I mean, Rule certainly seems like the type of guy that's got a plan, that's got a yeah, it'll be really, really fascinating to see how we go out and develop, especially what happens with Jamita. Anyway, that's another story on another time. But I think that just about nicely brings the podcast to a close. In fact, Ross, do you know what? I've got one last question before we go. It's Rangers take on Hearts on, I think it's the 1:30 kickoff on Sunday. It's a big if. It's a massive if. But see if Rangers go and win at Tynecastle, are we back in a title race?
Great question. No, I didn't expect that. I think you would have to say they are back in a title race, right? Because I think at that point it would go to 6 points, and we also have a game in hand over Hearts. So I think you would have to argue and say that Rangers would be in a title race. Do I think that Rangers are going to win the league this season? I'll be honest with you, I don't think so. But just from a mathematical standpoint, and percentage chance of lifting the title at the end of the season, I think you would have to say that they are in with a chance. Do you agree with that, or do you think I'm mental?
You're always in with a chance with it. I was a bit shocked to actually look on paper about how close that was. If we win on Saturday, 6 points behind with a game in hand, I was more shocked that there's even that possibility, given how hopeless we have been for the vast majority of the season. It's something for the manager to work towards. It's obviously a really good motivator, and the fact we've got... I know this is absolutely clutching at straws here, but the fact we've got no Europe, we've got 2 more games left in Europe, we can focus on giving it a bit of a run. But entirely, come back to me towards the end of January and ask me that question. Once we see who we've recruited, once we see who other teams have recruited, how certain managers are getting on at certain clubs as well, it'll be really, really interesting to see how it unfolds. But in terms of your question, I was shocked to see how close it actually was at the top of the table if Rangers get 3 points at the weekend.
Yeah, and I think this run of fixtures is going to tell you everything, isn't it? Because it's so difficult for us. We had a nice run there, but it's Hearts at the weekend. It's then Motherwell and St Mirren at home. It's then away to Celtic at Parkhead, and then we play Aberdeen back to back. So that's really as tough as it comes at the moment in this league. We're playing most of the best teams in the league, or what you would historically claim as the best teams in the league. So yeah, this run of fixtures, there's 6 or 7 games in there. I think that'll give us a really good understanding of where this Rangers team are going to be towards the end of the season. And I think the way I've always looked at this, because we were so far back early on, I'm the same as you. I can't I'm finding it hard to comprehend that we actually are so close, which probably shows you that Hearts hit such a bad run of form. You know, I think they'd only won 1 in 6 before they went to Parkhead, and then they've won the last 2. So fair play to them. And then you look at the likes, you know, across the city, Celtic, new manager come in, they've hit a bad run of form again, and really their form over the season hasn't been great, but we've just been worse. So it's funny that we are actually sitting in this position, because I just didn't think it was possible. I think when Danny Rule came in, we were 14 points behind Hearts. I think, might be wrong in that. So the fact that we are now, it's 9 with a game in hand, you're looking at it and going, look, there's a chance here if we were to go to Tynecastle at the weekend and win that game. I'm sure if you ask Hearts fans or you ask the Hearts dressing room, whatever, I'm sure at that point, if we go and win that game, they'll say, well, they definitely are in this race for this title. So, yeah, look, we're maybe getting ahead of ourselves, Kyle, but we've just got to look at it and take each game as it comes at the moment, which sounds the old kind of football cliche. But I think it's true. I think where Rangers have been performance-wise, I think we've just got to take it game by game and hope that once we get to February, March, that we have something to play for. I think that's the best way to look at it.
That's it. It's just, it's something to pin your hat on. It's something that Rangers can look. I love a goal to work towards. I suppose that's the goal for every team at the start of every season. It's to win the league title. But yeah, like I said, just looking at those figures after tonight, I couldn't believe how close it all actually was. But listen, I think that just about wraps it up for episode 2 of Let's Talk Rangers. Hopefully that was a bit more second half in the Hibs game than it was the first half of that podcast. As always, thanks to everyone who's listened, watched, tuned in, get involved in the discussion. As always, we really appreciate the support, the conversations that continue after each episode. That is exactly what the podcast's all about. I think I can speak for us both here, Ross, when I said it was quite enjoyable responding to people's comments on whatever platform it was. But before you go on, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss the next episode. The podcast will be available on all good audio platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So feel free to go there and give it a listen as well. And don't forget to share it with any Rangers fans you think would enjoy it. Make sure to check out our TikTok clips. They've been doing really well. We'll be posting the shorter bits from the show, and give us a wee follow on X as well. And just as an aside, since we started, there's a certain team in Glasgow that haven't won a game yet. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you all next Monday.